Hello, my well-planned and productive women, my charmed ones. Thank you guys so much for being here today. And of course, Merry Christmas if you're watching this on Christmas. I have just gotten off another tremendous call with the Charmed Life Mastermind. We just did our 2026 planner setup party, which, as the name suggests, is a class that we do together, a call that we do together, really, where we set up our planners together. And as part of that call every year, because it's like one of our annual traditions in the mastermind, as part of that call, I like to walk us through like a process for getting our planners set up and thinking about what needs to go in the planners and like what inserts we'll want to use and, the activities and responsibilities that we have in the new year that we need to make sure are organized in our planner, right? So, as my Christmas present to you, my wider audience, I've decided that I loved the process, the 7-step process that I shared in that class, that I really wanted to share it with my wider audience as a little Christmas present for you guys. If you're an OG to my channel, you know that every year on Christmas Day, I share my planner setup for the new year with you. It's like one of my long-standing traditions. But I got to tell you guys that every year, my functional planning setup gets like so simple, so turnkey, because the more I learn about planning and the more that I get zeroed into like my own productivity strategies, I just keep making things simpler and simpler for myself, right? Which is fantastic in a world that like teaches us that we need to hustle and we need to hit the ground running on New Year's Day and we need to set millions of goals and like overwhelm ourselves and optimize our schedules, right? I find that my best productivity tips are always the things that help me to simplify, to streamline, okay? So that getting things done becomes easier for me, not more difficult. And so I don't have like a beautiful, amazing planner setup to show you guys because my planner setup for this year is basically the same thing as last year, which is I'm using my 2026 digital Charmed Life Master Planner. I'm using the portrait, right? The portrait orientation file, not the landscape. And I also am using my digital version of the CEO Strategy Planner, not the whole planner, just certain pages of it for organizing my marketing, right? I don't have to use the whole thing because I already have a planner that I use and trust. So there are a lot of pages in that I just don't bother, using other than like the vision casting, the executive summary, vision casting stuff and my marketing section. Those are really big for me. Everything else for my business is either digital or, encompassed in my master planner, right? I use my master planner for it. So there's really not much to show you guys in terms of setup because when I have a digital master planner and a digital CEO strategy planner, I don't have to print anything out. I just open it in my iPad and what I end up doing is I put the CEO strategy planner as I kind of combined the PDF with my master planner PDF in GoodNotes, which is the PDF reader that I use. So I just kind of copy one and interject it into the notes section of my master planner, right? So that I have a whole like kind of like virtually divided section in my master planner that's for my CEO strategy planner. That's about it. I add in mindset work, whatever mindset work du jour we've got going on in the mastermind, right? Because I always am creating new, mindset things for the mastermind. So I think I'm using the daily self mastery 5, which is like a list of like one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things for your mindset that we kind of do on a daily basis. So that's going to be like an insert that I'll interject in there. And then the rest is just, I'll just have note paper for like journaling and brain dumping. Well, brain dumping, I have a whole brain dumping section, obviously, in the mastermind. And I'm sorry, in the master planner. But, any other additional note taking and working things out I can do there. And I do use my Apple Notes still because I'm an Apple girly. I have an iPhone, iPad, and I've got a Mac. So I use Apple Notes for organizing things as well. So my setup is really the same as it's always been. There's nothing amazing to see, but I wanted to give you guys a process for setting up your own planner if you're struggling to do that. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and interject that clip from the call that I just got off of. Hopefully you guys find it valuable and insightful and that it gives you, something to think about for setting up your planner for next year. In addition to that, if you are not yet a member of the Charmed Life Mastermind and you would like to get additional resources, classes, calls, accountability with me and our tremendous community of other like-minded women who are all aiming to create a balanced and successful life. They're all aiming to be that well-planned and productive woman that they know they can be. Then I definitely encourage you to join the mastermind. I will leave you guys the promotion link for the mastermind, the annual membership. There is a promotion I've got running at the end of the year. You're welcome to join us at the annual rate, save a fair bit of money on your enrollment, get into the subscription, get plugged in. So many classes, resources, planner inserts, different tools on demand as soon as you join. So definitely consider joining if you want to make 2026 a year that you become your most well-planned and productive version of you. I will tell you, give you guys a little hint, something else I mentioned on the call that we just got off of is we're kicking off January with a challenge that I'm calling the Gentle January Challenge, where instead of feeling like we need to hit the ground running in the new year, we are going to ease in with some prompts to help us consider, how we could be streamlining our life, how we could be easing into the year instead of making January like hustle, 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 instead of feeling like we have to have everything right day one. We're going to be easing into 2026 and easing into January. As I said to the mastermind ladies on the call, I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person that if I mess up January 1st, if I don't feel like everything that I wanted to do got done on January 1st, I already feel like the year has been a waste, right? So I need to break out of that mindset. And if you need to break out of that mindset too, then maybe that challenge and the mastermind is the right place for you, right? So I hope to see you in the mastermind if you'd like to join us. If not, I want you to enjoy this 7-step process for setting up your 2026 planner system. Have a really great holiday, and I will see you guys in the new year. Bye. So now I want to walk you guys through this 2026 planner setup process. Essentially, I think this is a 7-step process that I've put together with some prompts for us to use to set up our planners together for the new year, okay? And let me go ahead, and I think it would be nice to probably put some music on, right? We'll do a little bit of music, so we got a little background music. If you guys have any questions as we go through it, let me know. I'm always glad to extrapolate on anything. I'm going to go ahead and let's do our genius mode, classical music, shall we? I'm just going to have this on in the background. Okay, so this is a process that I've laid out. Like I said, I think it's 7 steps for setting up your planner, right? So step number 1 is to list your life priorities for 2026. You wear a lot of hats and manage a variety of different tasks and activities that should be organized in your planner. So grab your journal or open your notes app. Let's start by writing out all of the people, priorities, and responsibilities that will matter to you in 2026. For those of you who have gone through You Got Goals and I talk about priorities, this is a little bit different. This isn't necessarily areas of life that we're going to be setting goals towards, but this is like all of the different hats you wear, all of the different roles that you have in your life, right? So my directions for this step is to make a list of all the roles and responsibilities that you hold, and then note any big events or changes that you already know are happening this year. To give you a little bit of a trigger list for this, here's some categories to consider. So yourself, your health routines, your personal development, your partner or spouse, your children, their school activities and appointments, extended family, maybe elderly care, support, visits, pets, care, vet, grooming, home, cleaning, repairs, laundry, meals, your work or career, your school or studies, your business, so content, products, marketing, church or spiritual practice, community activities, your vehicles or transportation methods, finances, travel or events, volunteering or clubs. I'm going to go ahead and give us 3 minutes right now to just bring down the roles. What are all the roles that you have? The priorities in your life that you are responsible for? Okay, so hopefully you've been able to brain dump these categories, these roles and responsibilities that you are responsible for in 2026. Step two of this process is to identify tasks for each of those priorities. So, this step helps you to map what you actually need to track in your planner, right? So, we can get our planner set up the way we need it, right? So, the directions for this, let's break this down. For each priority, list the types of tasks that you end up managing. Okay, so for each of those roles or hats that you wear, what are the specific types of categories and tasks that you are responsible for? So here are some examples. So if you said you're responsible for your children, perhaps you're responsible for their school schedule, activities, doctor's visits, play dates, or family nights. For your home, perhaps grocery shopping, cleaning zones, laundry, home repairs. For work, meetings, project timelines, travel, events. Business, content creation, product launches, affiliate coordination, finances. Spiritual or church related services, volunteer work, community events. For your finances, maybe bill due dates, budgeting, savings goals. And for you personally, wellness routines, morning rituals, journaling, therapy, hobbies, etc. Right? So for each of those roles and responsibilities for your priorities for 2026, come up with the actual sorts of tasks that you actually have to execute on for that priority. And I'll give us 3 minutes to start brain dumping those. Okay, so hopefully you've been able to brain dump and list out those different activities, tasks, things you're responsible for in each of those priorities and roles for next year. Step number 3 is to choose how you'll manage objectives and projects. So, when we think about planner systems, right, we know that not all planners give you the space to strategically plan out projects and objectives. So if you don't have the Charmed Life Master Planner or the CEO Strategy Planner, you're going to want a dedicated space to organize and track these important outcomes to avoid overwhelm and to cultivate focus. Okay. You guys know that having an objective management, project management section in your planner, that is like the second phase of functional planning in the functional planning methodology. So it's really important, I believe, to have those things organized. And I think the things that it gives you really is that it helps you to avoid overwhelm because you see the plan step by step. And I think whenever you see the plan step by step, you always know the next thing to do. And therefore, you don't have to feel overwhelmed because you don't have to decide what the next thing is to do. You just have to follow the plan. And number two, it helps you to cultivate focus, right? Because you have already streamlined, you've already made a strategic action plan. You know what's important to focus on and what's not important to focus on, right? So the directions for this step are: think about how do you want to track your goals and projects, right? Do you want to use a digital app? Do you want a paper system or a hybrid? Decide the best system type for you and make sure to set it up in your planner. A little note I want to give you guys is that for members of the Trend Life Mastermind, you guys do get my project planning section like included as a member. So I'll make sure to link those on the replay page for this planner setup party as well if you don't already have that. But just give yourself a little bit of time to think about how you're going to be mapping out those projects and objectives. And so for paper systems, right, you could get the Charmed Life Master Planner. You could get the CEO Strategy Planner. Both of those have specific project planning, objective planning sections. You could get project planning inserts or use some other paper systems. I'm not aware of all of them that are out there in the world, but I know that others do exist, right? For digital systems, you could use things like Apple Notes, Google Docs, or Google Sheets, whatever that's called, or other spreadsheet software. You could use things like Asana, Notion, Trello, Todoist, I think is what it's called. These are different apps that do project management, right? And there's a variety of other apps and software for project management as well. So think about what your project objective management system is going to be for next year so that you can have all of those things organized and have that bird's eye view of your projects and objectives. Let me give us a few minutes for you guys to consider this. Okay, so hopefully you've given a little thought to what sort of system you want to use to manage your projects and objectives next year. Step number 4 is to pick your monthly and weekly layouts, right? So how do you like to see your schedule laid out? You guys may have heard me talk about this before, but when I think about choosing planner layouts, like your monthlies and your weeklies, your agendas, I always think about how we each kind of see time and need to see our tasks laid out differently, depending on the way that we work or the types of tasks that we do, or how many scheduled items that we tend to have, right? So, um, that is why I have a variety of different inserts that come with like the Charmed Life Master Planner. But in this step, I want you to think strategically about your monthly and weekly layouts if you haven't done so already. If you haven't decided what your final layouts are going to be, we want to review your list of priorities and roles from steps 1 and 2 and decide which type of monthly calendar layouts and weekly or daily agenda spreads you will need to manage all of those things in a visually legible style, right? That works for you. Okay. And I have some ideas here. In terms of monthly calendars, you can have a month on 1 page. That's a simple highlight view of things going on in your month. A month on 2 pages is really great for heavy schedule tracking. Monthly trackers can be used to organize your goal-related objectives and tasks. Obviously, inside of the master planner, there is the monthly tracker that tracks all of our objectives and puts all of our goal related tasks on one snippet overview, right? So that we always know the next thing we need to do to be moving things forward for our goals. And then the monthly master task list, that's another thing that's part of the master planner. It's a focused list that's just for the month so that you're not looking at everything you could be doing, but just everything that is important for right now for the next 30 days, right? Then we have the weekly agenda spreads, right? So for weekly, you have a week on 1 page. That's great for light weekly planning, right? If you're someone who doesn't have a lot of scheduled things, you just like a high level overview of the priorities that you need to remember. That's good for you. A week on 2 pages, like a horizontal, is great for like a daily task list. The week on 2 pages, the vertical, is great for time blocking or appointment heavy weeks so that you can mix, schedules and tasks in one view. And a day per page or even 2 pages, right, is best if you manage a lot of tasks or a lot of clients, a lot of work, and you really have to have a long task list with a broken out schedule. Okay. So these are things to consider when you're choosing your monthly and weekly inserts. I'll give us 3 minutes to think about how that works for each of us. Okay, ladies, so hopefully you've gotten that step done. You've thought about your monthly calendars, weekly agendas, inserts that you'll need to manage your time and tasks for 2026. So, step 5 is to forward plan for 2026. So, let's think ahead. What can you schedule now for the year? So, the directions for this step are to brainstorm a list of tasks and events that you're already aware of and map them into your planner for 2026. So, some ideas for these would be birthdays and anniversaries, school dates, vacations, medical appointments, known work or business launches, holidays or religious observances, travel, things you already know are going on for the year. Let's get those brain dumped so that we can get them scheduled into our planner. I'll give us 3 minutes for that. Okay, ladies, so hopefully you've begun to brain dump some of these things that you know are coming up next year. Obviously, I only need more than 3 minutes to get this out onto paper. So if you want to come back to this step and work through it, or if you're watching the replay and you want to pause and keep working through this, absolutely. Please take the time you need, because I think the more we do to pre-plan our year, the better it gets, right? That's that quote I like to use. That's from Benjamin Franklin, that for every minute spent organizing, an hour is earned. And I think this is one of the ways we can organize our year through our planners ahead of time. It saves us time, energy, decision-making power in the new year. Okay, step number 6 is how will you capture tasks that pop up throughout the day in your planner? So when a new task comes to mind, or you get a phone call and someone's asking you to do something, you're getting an email and someone's making a request of you, how are you going to capture those new tasks that pop up? Because we know that one part of planning in my functional planning methodology is to set our goals, break those goals down into objectives, understand all of our responsibilities and roles for the year and all of the tasks that relate to that, and plan those into our planners. But then part of planning is also dealing with the things that pop up throughout our days, right? So how do you plan to capture those tasks that pop up? So the direction for this step is to decide the place and process that you will follow for new tasks that you can capture, so that you can capture all relevant new tasks and data without interrupting your existing plan throughout the year. So we want to think about the dedicated place in our planning system and the process that we're going to follow for new tasks, right? So that we're capturing everything and we are not interrupting existing plans throughout the year. Because how many of us get a new thing that pops up and we have a plan for the day, but the new thing pops up? We start doing that and then it knocks off the rest of the things. And that's not the best way to prioritize things. Ooh, it's getting a little loud. I'm just going to lower that a little bit. So I want you to think about how you're going to be capturing those tasks. So there's a few strategies that I want you to consider in terms of an inbox strategy, because generally what I consider this is an inbox, right? The place where you're going to put all new incoming information and tasks and activities. So some inbox strategies for you is to list new tasks on like a brain dump sheet before prioritizing them. That's what I end up doing inside the Charmed Life Master Planner. I will use a brain dump page, put anything new on the brain dump page, and then use the prioritization matrix to actually prioritize to understand what I'm going to do with that task, when I'm going to act on it. Another inbox strategy is to capture new tasks and ideas onto sticky notes and then collect them on an inbox page. A lot of times people love doing that, having like a dedicated inbox page, and then you got your sticky notes and you write the new task and you put it on there and then you review them later. You could also keep a running inbox in a digital notes app if you want to do that. I also do that as well. I have that as well. I do have an app. I do have a notes in my Apple Notes app for every month. And it's kind of like all new things that pop up. I will put them there usually. And then you can also allocate a file in your email for unactioned tasks. So if you get a lot of tasks via email for work, let's say, you may want to create another file folder in your work email that's for things that you have like read and you know there's an action in there for you to do, but you can't take it yet, right? So that you can go through and review those later. So those are a few inbox strategies that you may want to consider implementing. But then also the prioritization strategies, what you're actually going to do after you've captured and you're going to review those things that you captured, right? So the first one I already mentioned is the Eisenhower matrix, because that's part of my brain dump process. The Eisenhower matrix is a prioritization matrix that helps you to prioritize tasks by urgency and importance. And by urgency and importance, you can determine what you actually need to do. If something is urgent and important, you probably need to do it now or today, which means that the task has to be put on today's to-do list. If something is urgent but not important, you may want to find someone else to delegate it to. If something is not urgent but it's important, it's something you can schedule for a specific day later on. And if it's not urgent and not important, it's probably something you can put on like a someday maybe list, or just leave there or delete it entirely, right? So that is the first prioritization strategy. That's the strategy I end up using the most, is Eisenhower matrix. Another strategy is the ABCD method, where this ABCD is like a categorization for the importance of a task or the priority of a task. You could use something like that. There's also the Moscow method, which has to do with like must-haves, should have, could have, like would have if it's if something is you would have. I think that's the last one. Must have, should have, could have. Let me see. Hold on. I actually have an entire. Let me pull it up. I pulled it up before class. Here it is. I have a whole blog post on my prioritization strategies. So Moscow method is must have, should have, could have, and won't have. That's the W, is a won't, not would. Okay, is won't have, right? So you break the tasks into those sorts of categories, right? Where am I? Sorry, I'm losing where I am on the screen. Here we go. Then the next prioritization strategy is eat the frog. That's you do the most unpleasant task first because it reduces your resistance to doing everything else. There's the RICE framework. This is like a project management framework for more like professional system prioritization. So RICE stands for R is reach, how many people will be affected by the task or project. I is impact, the overall effect or benefit of the task. C is confidence, right? Estimating your confidence on that you'll be able to achieve the expected outcome. And E is effort. So considering the resources, time, and effort that are required for that task. And then what you can do is you can calculate the RICE score, right? So to determine how high priority something is. And the next one is the Pareto principle, which is another one of my favorites, the 80-20 rule. I will say that I use probably 80-20 rule is probably one I use the most. Well, Eisenhower and 80-20, those two are my jam. That's what I end up using all the time. So Pareto principle says that 80% of your results come from only 20% of your actions. And so you can achieve greater results by focusing on fewer things, right? So if you have let's say you have a task list with 20 different items on there, only 20% of the things on that task list are actually going to have real strong results, right? The rest of that, the remaining 80% of that list is going to be little filler tasks, little things that only move the needle teeny bit. So by understanding the weight of your tasks, by how much impact each task creates, you can focus more and prioritize those weightier tasks first, get those out of the way, and then you can fill in with any of the little tasks that are just going to be the little needle movers, right? So those are the 6 prioritization strategies that I love. And like I said, I have a blog post, and you know what? I will right now drop it into the chat, and I will leave this blog post linked below on the replay page for the Planner Setup Party as well, so that you guys can read a little bit more about those prioritization strategies, okay? But let that help you to come up with your own inbox strategies. Okay, so hopefully you've given some thought to inbox strategies and prioritization strategies you may be able to use in your planner for next year. Now, step number 7 is how will you use what you know to plan better in the future? So I want you to think, if you're always taking action, when are you setting aside time to review and reflect on your planning? So my directions for step 7 is to decide the process and frequency for reviewing your plans to apply new techniques and reflections to improve your planning over time. You guys know that having a review or reflection process is a very important part of functional planning and a very important part of what we do inside of the mastermind. And it's important to actually know how frequently you are going to pause to reflect on what you learned from the past, right? And what you learned from planning and learning from our mistakes and learning to optimize our planning and even integrating new things that we're learning, especially as part of the mastermind. You're learning new things and new techniques all the time. So when are we actually going to pause and think about all of those things and actually implement so that we get better in the future, right? So there are 2 strategy things here I have for you. Number 1 is to think about the frequency of how often you want to be reviewing. Now, you guys know inside of the mastermind, we do a monthly planning power hour. So we will do our monthly review together, right? So that's a process we have for reviewing the month. But you may also want to consider a weekly process, and of course, we also do a quarterly process as well. So we do quarterly and monthly together. And technically, we do a little bit of weekly inside of Slack. But if you want to have your own review process as well, that's a good idea. So think about the frequency for where you want to pause and reflect, like look back at your planning and reflect and make adjustments. And then think about the steps of the process that you would want to integrate. So I have kind of laid out on screen a process that I would say is a nice, like solid process that you can extrapolate for your own needs. Okay. Use it, change things, take what you want, leave what you don't, right? So the process I have for you guys is to reflect on what worked. So think about what parts of your planner did you use consistently? What tools or layouts made your days smoother or more productive? That's the first part. Next, identify what didn't work. So what felt cluttered, unused, or overwhelming? Were there any pages or sections that you ignored completely? Next, review your results. Did you make progress on your goals or priority tasks? What actually got done versus what just got carried forward? Check in with your routines. So are your morning, workday, and evening routines supporting your energy and your priorities? Is there anything that you want to adjust or simplify? Adjust your planner setup, add or remove spreads as needed. So inserts, trackers, layouts, realign your layouts with the season that you're entering or your current bandwidth. Plan forward with intention. So based on what you learned, how will you plan differently next month? What strategies, habits, or systems will you keep or try next? And celebrate and close the loop. So acknowledge your growth, your wins, and lessons. Journal a few quick notes to yourself for next time, right? So this is a really good process. You could do some of these things weekly. You could do some of these things monthly. You could do some of these things quarterly. Generally, if you're following along in the mastermind, we do much of this already, but I want you to think strategically about what your review process is going to be, the frequency and the process that you would like to follow. And I'm going to give us 3 minutes to think about this final prompt. Okay, ladies, so hopefully you gave a little bit of thought to how you're going to be reviewing your planning and your planner so that you can take what you've learned and plan better moving forward. So that was my process for 7-step process for getting your planner set up for the new year. I hope that that was helpful for you. We will adjourn until 2026. Okay? Guys, bye.